Welcome to the P.A.S. Report Weekly Roundup Podcast. The P.A.S. Report provides an honest analysis on the critical issues that matter to you without the biased media filters. Here's your host, Professor Nicholas Giordano.
What's up, everyone? Welcome to the P.A.S. Report Podcast. This is your host, Nick Giordano. I have an awesome episode lined up for you. Before I get to it, make sure you subscribe and follow this podcast so you never miss an episode, and share this episode with your family and friends and on social media. Today, I'm going to talk about something that's critically important. To me, it's the most important issue that we face as a nation. We continue to witness the double standards. We continue to witness the out-of-control bureaucracy that has been weaponized for political purposes. We witness the corruption that plagues our institutions. And I want to do a deep dive into this pressing issue that strikes at the core of the republic. The alleged protection of politicians by government agencies for ideological purposes is extraordinarily dangerous. And I want to specifically focus on the FBI's actions in safeguarding President Biden and the Biden family business, because that's what's really going on. You have the House Oversight Committee. They're moving forward with the process of holding FBI Director Christopher Wray in contempt of Congress. Wray is completely useless. He should not be the leader of the most powerful law enforcement agency in the entire country. And there are disturbing questions that continue to arise about the impartiality and the integrity of our nation's once premier law enforcement agency. Concerns continue to grow about selective enforcement and a potential cover-up. That's what it looks like. Not for nothing, but throughout the Trump years and the Russian collusion fraud that was fed to each and every one of us, you had endless idiots on the media, the pundit class, going out there day in and day out screaming that this is worse than Watergate. Yet it all turned out to be BS. It was all nonsense. It was all lies. Here, you actually have something that goes far beyond Watergate. When thinking back to the Founding Fathers and what they fought for, things like limited government, God-given liberties, safeguarding the integrity of our institutions, it's important to remind people that what we are witnessing today is everything that they feared. Everything. They understood the dangers that arise when government agencies stray from their intended purposes. When government agencies think that they get to act above the law, that they're not responsible to anyone, that Congress can conduct its power of oversight. The founders held deep-rooted beliefs and principles of limited government. They understood the fundamental importance of checks and balances. They understood that concentrated power in the hands of a few leads to corruption. But not only does it lead to corruption, it also leads to the erosion of individual liberties as we begin to witness political opposition being targeted by these powerful institutions. Our nation's founders, they fought tirelessly to establish a system that ensures accountability, that ensures transparency, where people receive equal treatment under the law. Yet today we have these self-anointed guardians of democracy that believe they could do whatever the hell they want, and they don't have to even answer for it. They can lie, they can manipulate, stonewall, deceive, and they do it and get away with it because there's no accountability, because nobody focuses on it, because nobody really presses them. The alleged protection of politicians, especially when we look at President Biden and the Biden family, by agencies like the FBI, it should raise red flags because it threatens the very essence of our republic. And while the alleged corruption of President Biden and his family, while that's alarming, while that may merit impeachment and removal from office, the much bigger story out there is the FBI and the Department of Justice's cover-up operation designed to protect him. That's the biggest story. Now, I'm going to explain it all in this episode, but before I get to it, I just want to mention I have a new piece out on campus reform that is an important read. It's eye-opening. When you're sitting here and you wonder about the future of our great nation, one of the important things that you have to pay attention to is the types of students our universities are producing. And I want you to take a listen of a sound clip from this commencement speech. It's a commencement speech from a CUNY graduate and future lawyer, Fatima Mohammed. Take a listen.
Like many of you, I chose CUNY School of Law for its articulated mission to be law in the service of human needs. One of very few legal institutions created to recognize that the law is a manifestation of white supremacy that continues to oppress and suppress people in this nation and around the world. May the rage that fills this auditorium dance in the hallways of our elementary schools in our home villages of Sheikh Jarrah, Aden, Yemen, Haiti, Puerto Rico, and the Philippines. But all of this, in spite of the racism, in spite of the selective activism, the self-serving interests of CUNY Central, an institution that continues to fail us, that continues to train and cooperate with the fascist NYPD, the military, that continues to train IDF soldiers to carry out that same violence globally.
I swear, these people are so ungrateful. You know, they live in the confines, the comfort of the United States of America, where they're insulated from the horrors that go on around the rest of the world. And they really have no appreciation, no regard for the United States. And a lot of it has to do with the education system. You know, sadly, these instances, they serve as stark reminders of the deep divisions and the consequences stemming from this diversity, equity, inclusion, and social justice push. It's a toxic ideological movement. The radical left uses every opportunity it can to indoctrinate Americans, and we're seeing the results of that. This speech is hardly an exception to the rule. You have Dr. Scott Atlas. He was giving a commencement speech. And remember, Dr. Atlas, he was a critic of lockdowns and masks and most of the other mandates. He repeatedly criticized Lord Fauci, Dr. Birx, and others. He worried about the totalitarian approach and warned that the pandemic decisions that were being made at the time weren't based on sound science. And it turned out that more people should have listened to him because he was right on just about everything. Yet, as he's giving his commencement address to students, the students were loudly booing. And some people in the audience repeatedly screamed, "Go F yourself." Imagine you're a parent of one of these ungrateful little spoiled brats. I mean, if my kids ever did that, if they ever displayed that level of disrespect to any guest speaker, I don't care who's speaking. I don't care if it's George Soros all the way on the far left. I can't stand him. Or I don't care if it's President Biden. I don't care who it is. I would yank my kid out of there so fast and he would be in a world of trouble. I don't care how old they are. They could be friggin' 30 years old for all I care. As a parent, it is my job to raise respectful, decent human beings. Even if they disagree with the message or the messenger, they still need to show a level of respect. Now, these are young adults. These aren't children. They're young adults. They should be ashamed of themselves. If these young adults can't even exercise a basic level of self-control during a graduation that's supposed to be a celebration, how are they going to function effectively in the workplace? Oh, they're not. What they're going to do is they're going to poison the workplace by introducing their ideology into whatever job they're doing and bitching and complaining about everything. So, you want to know why our companies like Anheuser-Busch and Bud Light and Target are doing what they're doing? Well, it's because you have these graduates going into these corporations and completely disregarding the actual business model, and instead they want to be politicians. They want to inject policy. Completely ridiculous. To think that these graduates will one day be the leaders in law and business, medicine, science, education, and public policy, that's frightening. That is frightening. In any event, I'm not going to hop on and check out the piece because it's worth the read. I have the links up at the PAS Report website, pasreport.com, so check it out. Now let's get to the main topic, because the other day, after weeks of stonewalling by the FBI and FBI Director Christopher Wray, some members of Congress got to take a look at the FD 1023 form that alleges the then Vice President, now current President Joe Biden, was involved in a bribery scheme. And it was a massive bribery scheme. We're not talking about, an envelope full of cash. We're talking about like briefcases filled with cash. In this $5 million criminal scheme that involved President Biden and a foreign national, there was an exchange of money for policy decisions. So that's what's alleged. And it is important to say that. It is important to note that this is nothing more than an allegation. Nothing has been proven, and there is still a lot we don't know. We have no idea if the money was actually exchanged or whether this was an offer made to then Vice President. If it was an offer that was made, did Biden accept the money or did he reject it? Did he notify the feds at the time? Did the alleged foreign national speak and meet with President Biden himself, or was it outsourced to one of the Biden family members who serve as a conduit for the president? I mean, we know what, 8, 9, 10 Biden family members are on the payroll. And then we have to ask, what did the FBI do with the information? Did they investigate it or did they cover it up? These are all important questions that have to be answered. So if anyone is telling you that this controversy is a nothing burger or that this will be the thing that takes down Biden, they're lying to you. They just don't know. We need a lot more information before we can make that determination. Now, I explained what a form FD 1023 is on a previous podcast episode. Basically, it's used by agents to record unverified information from confidential human sources. What does that mean? Basically, it means FBI informants, paid informants of the FBI. What's interesting about this is that a month or so ago, when the existence of this form first emerged, some tried to downplay it, and some even tried to link it to Giuliani. As a matter of fact, the Washington Post just this week is still trying to link it to Giuliani. I always tell you, politics, it's not rocket science. Understanding politics is not really all that difficult. A lot of it comes down to just basic common sense. If Giuliani or one of his associates was the confidential human source, why would the FBI and Director Wray fight so hard to withhold the document from members of Congress? Why would they fight so hard to withhold the document from the American people, especially considering that it's supposed to be an unclassified document? I mean, think about it a second. If it were the case that Giuliani or one of his associates were a confidential human source, they would have immediately released this document to discredit the allegation and justify the potential lack of action to investigate the claim, right? The media has savaged Giuliani. They've attempted to destroy Giuliani's reputation and credibility over the last 8 years. And they easily, if it was Giuliani or one of his associates, could say, well, this is nothing more than a hit job by a Trump ally. The fact that they fought so hard to keep this quiet, to keep this document under wraps, not even to show it to members of Congress who have the constitutional duty of oversight of the FBI, the fact that they tried to hide it tells me that the source isn't tied to the Trump orbit. It's obvious. And now we're getting reports surfacing that the confidential human source that's listed in this form is a person the FBI considers to be highly credible. He's been used by the FBI in multiple investigations that date all the way back to the Obama years. In fact, he's been an informant for the FBI for 13 years. The reason I bring this up is because we need to squash the rumors, but more importantly, it's to point out that we've seen this game get played before. Think about Hunter Biden's laptop. How they tried to pass it off as Russian disinformation. You had, 51 or 52 top-level intelligence and former intelligence officials signing off on a letter stating just that. Well, it's the same thing that we're seeing now, right? Don't forget, that letter stating that Hunter Biden's laptop was Russian disinformation allowed Biden and the media the ability to cover it up. It allowed Biden the ability to reject the notion at a debate and not press the issue further in the debate. So it's the same thing, but what's even more intriguing is a tweet that was sent out by Congresswoman Anna Paulina Luna. She sits on the House Oversight Committee. After the meeting, she tweeted out, quote, "Just left the meeting for House Oversight. The FBI is afraid their informant will be killed if unmasked," end quote. Now again, don't just jump on this. I don't know if this is true or not. I am simply going by her words. We need to know who told her this. Was it the FBI? Did the FBI say that this to Congressman Comer, who leads up the Oversight Committee? And did Congressman Comer then relay this to other members of Congress? How does Congresswoman Anna Paulina Luna know this? Is this just speculation? We don't know. We need those answers. However, if it is true that the FBI is really concerned about confidential informants, if they're really concerned about the well-being of this person that made this allegation against the President of the United States, well, now President of the United States, when the allegation was made, he wasn't. If they really believe that the informant will be killed if they're unmasked, that's pretty damn concerning. Consider that this source is making an allegation against President Biden. Is the FBI concerned that someone in the Biden orbit will target the informant to silence him or her? Is the FBI concerned that if the informant's identity is revealed, they may be killed because of other cases they worked on, not necessarily the Biden allegation? And if so, are any of those cases related to any politicians from either political party? Or is this the FBI just throwing up a smokescreen? I mean, remember, the FBI was the one that they said the same thing about Christopher Steele and the fake Russian dossier, right? In that case, no one died. The only thing that happened is that the Democrat FBI Russian collusion narrative fell apart. It exposed the corruption embedded in the system. So is the FBI trying to hide behind the wall of this potential threat to the informant as a smokescreen to distract us? And the truth is, we simply don't know at this point. But if we had a real press, if we actually had a media, those are the types of questions that should be asked. And of course, you have Democrats and their media allies trying to downplay it. Some are even saying that It's already been investigated. And I want to take up that argument when we get back from this short break. So hang tight. We'll be right back. Listen up, P.A.S. report audience. Experts say that China is hoarding a massive amount of food. They're soon going to have over 2/3 of the globe's corn reserves, over half its rice reserves, and over half its wheat reserves. But when asked about it, China lies. And one expert says that they, of course, will never admit to doing something like that. Well, what does China know that we don't? When it comes to the global food shortages, China is the canary in the coal mine. And you have to understand, China is the world's #1 food importer. They rely on the rest of the world to keep their people fed, so they can't afford to mess up. There'll be riots, civil panic, or even worse, when over 1 billion people can't eat, it's going to create a crisis for them. What does that mean for us? What does that mean for Americans like me and you? Food shortages. That's why it's a smart idea to stock up on a kit of the best-selling 4 Patriot survival food. Create your own stockpile of the best-selling 4 Patriot survival food kits. It's hand-packed in the United States. The kits are compact, stock easily. They have different delicious breakfasts, lunches, and dinners, and I can attest to that because I use 4 Patriots, and their 5-star reviews on the website rave about the flavor and taste. Right now, you can get 10% off your first purchase of 4 Patriot survival food by typing in the code PAS at checkout. Just go to 4patriots.com, use code PAS to get 10% off your first purchase of 4 Patriot survival food. That's 4patriots.com. Use code PAS. Welcome back, everyone. So before the break, I said that I want to take up the idea of Democrats and the media allies trying to downplay the allegation against President Biden, this pay-to-play scheme to the tune of $5 million, where a foreign national wanted certain policies in exchange for the money. Some are saying it's already been investigated, yet they provide nothing to back that up. And if it had been investigated and there's nothing there, then why can't the FBI release what they did to investigate? Why are the Democrats trying to shield the FBI? And what led them to the conclusion that no crime was committed? Again, these are questions that should be asked. Other Democrats are saying that it's a nothing burger, that the allegation by itself didn't warrant any full-scale investigations. Well, which is it? Has it been investigated or not? See, they don't even realize when they're contradicting themselves. It's either been investigated or it hasn't. And if it hasn't, why not? Then you have people like Congressman Raskin. And I want you to take a listen to what he had to say.
What we're talking about here is a confidential human source reporting a conversation with someone else. So we're talking about is secondhand hearsay. And they did whatever investigative due diligence was called for in that assessment period, and they found no reason to escalate it from an assessment to a so-called preliminary investigation, and after that comes a full-blown investigation.
Wait a minute. We got to hit the pause button. Did he really just say what I think he said? Did he really go there? Let's take another listen just to make sure that we're sure we heard him correctly.
What we're talking about here is a confidential human source reporting a conversation with someone else. So we're talking about is secondhand hearsay, and they did whatever investigative due diligence was called for in that assessment period, and they found no reason to escalate it from an assessment to a so-called preliminary investigation, and after that comes a full-blown investigation.
He did. He said it. I mean, isn't that the exact thing the FBI did to former President Trump? I mean, Congressman Raskin conveniently ignores that the FBI got the information when it comes to President Trump from Christopher Steele through a Clinton campaign proxy, Michael Sussman, which led to a full-blown investigation based on nothing more than unverified information and hearsay. Not only did it lead to an investigation, it led to a special counsel that tore this country apart. So Congressman Raskin is openly admitting how the FBI handles Biden and the Biden family business, and it's the exact opposite of how they handled Trump. I don't think that was Congressman Raskin's intention, but he certainly highlighted the double standards that exist. And he, they don't even try and hide it. They don't even care. That's the crux of it. How the FBI bases its actions, not on the rule of law, but on the personality and beliefs of an individual. That's how they do it. And for those who claim that then Trump Attorney General William Barr looked at this and determined not to investigate or take any investigative actions, notice how they are intentionally vague. They don't explain what Attorney General Barr looked at. If we just learned about this a month ago, how can they possibly know that Barr already looked at this? I mean, nobody knew this document existed except within the confines of the FBI and the Department of Justice. Now, I don't know about you, but I haven't heard the former Attorney General come out and make any public statement saying otherwise. And notice, they never say what the allegations were that Barr assessed. So we constantly get this conflicting information that exists out there. You have Congressman Comer stating that the FD 1023 in question is being used in an ongoing investigation and hasn't been disproved. Again, so which is it? Is it being used in an ongoing investigation? Has it already been investigated? Or did the allegations not provide a basis to launch an investigation? We don't know. What's with all the misdirection and what is the truth? It would be nice to know what that is. Again, it shouldn't be all that hard. It's not hard to answer these questions. Director Wray could come out right now, right this second, and he could clear this up instantaneously. He could state whether there is a current investigation based on the allegations of the confidential human source or whether there's not an investigation. Why doesn't he just clear it up for everyone? And maybe that's the purpose. This is the important part. He knows that if he openly states that no investigation is being conducted, the Republicans are going to have a field day with that. They're going to have a field day. You know, you think about Jim Jordan's weaponization committee, and he's going to take them all to task over it. Director Wray knows that. If Director Wray states that it's already been investigated and there is nothing there, then again, Republicans can have a field day because they could subpoena all the documents related to the investigation and hold congressional hearings. If the investigation is closed, the FBI can't use the excuse that they're unable to turn over documents due to an ongoing investigation, and they'll have a much more difficult time stonewalling Congress. Doesn't mean that they won't try, but it would be much more difficult if they said they already investigated the matter and there was nothing there. If they admit there's an open investigation, well, then Director Wray knows there's going to be an enormous number of questions about where the investigation stands, whether or not a special counsel should be appointed, whether the investigation is being slow-walked, like the IRS investigation into Hunter Biden and his business dealings. And if it is being slow-walked, why is it being slow-walked? How many agents are working on the case? Or are they just stating that there's an investigation, but they aren't really investigating anything? And would that be proof of a cover-up? So that's why Director Wray won't answer the question in the obvious of whether or not there's an active investigation, whether or not it's been investigated, or whether or not it's not being investigated at all. And I want you to consider two things. The first is the Hunter Biden laptop. We learned about the Hunter Biden laptop in October of 2020 through Miranda Devine's great reporting in the New York Post. Now, even though you have morons out there that still want to dismiss the laptop is real. The contents of the laptop are real. In 2021, we learned that the FBI had the laptop in their possession since at least 2019. So we found out about the laptop 2 years. Well, we found out about it a year later, and then we found out that the FBI knew about it 2 years ago. So why did intelligence officials lie and say it was Russian disinformation? Well, I'm not going to rehash that on this episode. I explained that in an episode I released on April 26. Check it out, episode 385. And I explained how the big lie is being exposed. However, we also learned that 3 or 4 months before Miranda Devine's story, in the summer of 2020, the FBI was already playing interference to protect then-candidate Biden. Okay, so the FBI was directly meddling in the election. In August of 2020, FBI Supervisory Intelligence Analyst Brian Atton, he opened an assessment which was used by FBI headquarters to improperly discredit negative Hunter Biden information as disinformation, and it caused the investigative activity to cease. During the summer, we also learned that several people at the FBI work closely with Twitter and the Twitter legal team, including James Baker. Yes, the same James Baker that previously worked in the FBI and was a key figure in the FBI Russian collusion scam investigation. We know they worked together to kill Biden family business stories. They worked together to kill Biden corruption stories. The FBI, prior to Miranda Devine's reporting, warned all the social media companies that they had to be suspicious of any postings about the Biden family business because it could be potentially Russian disinformation. Now think about that. They were in the possession of the laptop for over a year at that point. They knew the contents of the laptop were real. They had the Biden's own documents. They had their own emails, their own text messages, their own words, yet they knowingly covered it up. They knowingly tried to make it as if it was Russian disinformation. So who was doing the election meddling? And why didn't the American people find out in 2019 about this laptop that the FBI was in possession of? Why did we have to learn about it through Miranda Devine? Again, transparency in government is important. And was the FBI playing political favorites because they despised President Trump that much? Then you look at the latest controversy surrounding this FD 1023 and the alleged $5 million criminal scheme. The FBI has known about this since the allegation was first made in 2020. Keep that date in mind, that year in mind. Here we are, 3 years later. We're in 2023, and members of Congress and the American public are just learning about this allegation 3 years later. Why? Why has it taken so long for us to find out about this? Use your logic out there. This is a government that is unable to keep anything a secret, yet they were able to keep this under wraps for 3 years. Does that make any sense to you out there? But it goes beyond that, because according to reports, there are notes in the FD 1023 that date back to 2017. It looks like the FBI was alerted then about the alleged bribery scheme. You were talking about 6 years, and we're just learning about this now. What's interesting is if they were alerted in 2017 about this bribery scheme, it leads me to believe that in 2020, this informant presented more evidence of a potential bribery scheme. Now, again, that's speculation on my part, but why are there all these dates in there? So that's something that we have to look at. Now, think about President Trump or former President Trump. When it comes to former President Trump, everything leaks like a sieve. Every day we hear about anonymous sources alleging one thing or another. Every day we hear how indictments and charges are inevitable, how they're going to happen at any minute, how he's going to be perp-walked again. You have several investigations going on. We're hearing about the Georgia investigation, and it's potentially expanding into other states, and it's going to include racketeering charges. You have the Jack Ryan special counsel, where we're hearing about a Trump recording of a conversation discussing classified documents about a potential flood and whether the flood was natural or whether it was intentional. All these different things just constantly leaking out of the Jack Ryan special counsel. You have the FBI that released pictures of classified envelopes that were found in Mar-a-Lago. We do know that there is, or let's hope people know, that there's another special counsel investigation going on into Biden's handling of classified documents from his time in the Senate and as Vice President of the United States. Do you ever hear any leaks from that investigation? I mean, this is a guy who housed classified information in the Penn Biden Center. He housed classified information in an office in Chinatown, and I believe it was Hunter Biden's office. I'm not 100% sure, but I'm pretty sure it was his office. If not, I'll correct it. You didn't hear anything about that. He had classified documents in his garage next to his Corvette. But nothing leaks out of that special counsel investigation. Well, they say, oh, because President Biden cooperated, he turned everything over. His team contacted officials as soon as they became aware of these documents, because they suddenly became aware of these documents after the Mar-a-Lago raid and right before the midterm elections. Not only did they suddenly become aware of these documents then, we didn't learn about it until after the midterm elections. It wasn't, the Department of Justice didn't make any announcements, the FBI didn't say anything. Interesting how that works, right? So when it comes to Trump, you get leak after leak after leak. When it comes to Biden, you get nothing but silence. Nothing leaks out. And the only time we learn anything is if a whistleblower comes forward or if a member of Congress comes across new materials. And you want to tell me that the FBI and the Department of Justice isn't corrupt, that they're not protecting President Biden?
Come on, give me a break, man.
I could even bring up how the FBI was hunting down Ashley Biden's diary. I mean, a diary gets stolen. Since when does it get elevated to an FBI offense, a federal offense? I mean, you're talking about a local law enforcement matter, if that. Yet here you have the FBI kicking in the door of James O'Keefe. Truly amazing, isn't it? So is the FBI President Biden's personal police force? Because that's what it appears to be. I didn't even get into the Secret Service and how they covered up Hunter Biden's firearm violation. Understand, this country, we could survive corrupt politicians. We've seen plenty of corrupt politicians come and go. Some of them still remain behind bars. However, what this country cannot survive is a corrupt bureaucracy that obstructs justice, that plays political favoritism. A bureaucracy, a corrupt bureaucracy that believes it's above the law. A corrupt bureaucracy that believes it doesn't have to answer to anyone. A corrupt bureaucracy that disregards our Constitution every step of the way. A corrupt bureaucracy that continually interferes in elections. So that's the biggest story here. It's not necessarily the corruption of President Biden. And understand, I'm not dismissing any type of corruption. If he's corrupt and the allegations and there's evidence that prove it true, then he should be prosecuted. But what I am saying is that the much bigger story is the FBI's protection of President Biden and the Biden family business. And this represents a critical moment in our nation's history. We stand at a crossroads where the principles of limited government accountability and transparency are all being tested at the same time. And it is incumbent on us, we the people, to demand answers, to hold our institutions accountable, to ensure that the foundations on which this nation was built remain strong. Remember, the founders entrusted us with this system, a system designed to prevent the concentration of power, a system designed to try and protect it against corruption. It is our duty to honor them. We have to remain vigilant, be informed, and be engaged. Doesn't matter what our political ideology is. Understand that if you're on the left and you support Biden and you allow the FBI to get away with this stuff, well, what happens when it's a candidate that you ideologically agree with that they're targeting? What happens then? Do you not see how this can spiral out of control? Understand that a lot of the people in our bureaucracy, I know conservatives love to scream Marxist, and there are a bunch of Marxists out there. There are a lot of people that preach Marxism, and they want to see a Marxist system. But when we're talking about the core of our bureaucracy, understand that Christopher Wray isn't a Marxist. James Comey isn't a Marxist. John Brennan, now that's a different story. Sooner or later, they're going to target someone that you support. So I suggest you start speaking out. Unfortunately, because so many people are so silent, and because so many people don't care because it may be their person that they support, we the people are failing. We're failing our founding fathers. We're failing the system that they gave us, that they fought for. We have to recommit ourselves to the principles of limited government, to the enduring quest for justice and freedom, to the appreciation of God-given liberties. The abuses of power represents the gravest threat to our way of life. And you could try and downplay it all you want. But in the end, if nothing gets done, if we don't rein in the out-of-control bureaucracy, if we don't begin to reform and start taking power away from the bureaucracy, you will regret it one day. But by then, it's going to be too late. So we need to get engaged. And this should be the most important issue in the 2024 elections. Now, if you found this episode informative, please share it with others, put it on social media. I appreciate all the 5-star ratings and written reviews on any podcast platform that allows it. I want to thank you for joining me today, and I'll be back on Monday with another great episode of the P.A.S. Report Podcast.
Thank you for listening to the P.A.S. Report Weekly Roundup Podcast.
Have a good one. Bye.
Be sure to rate, share, and subscribe to the podcast so you'll never miss an episode. Also, visit PASreport.com and follow us on Twitter @PAS Report.